Great, welcome everybody to the second information session on the Regional Parks Strategic Plan update. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us and learn about the process and how you can participate. My name is Emma Taylor. I'm a planner here at Regional Parks, and I'll be giving a presentation on the proposed material for the strategic plan. And with me, I have Christiana Jones. Christiana is a communications specialist here at Regional Parks, and she'll be facilitating the Q&A after the presentation is complete. And Kaylin Jenkinson is also a communications specialist here, and she'll help you in the chat and the Q&A. She'll also be posting some relevant links and information that are relevant as we go. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Lekwungen speaking peoples on whose territory this CRD building stands. We recognize and respect the First Nations governments across the region, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations in the core area, the Wasanich nations on the Saanich Peninsula and Gulf Islands, and to the west, the Sianu, the Sauk, and Pacheedaht, all of whom have a long-standing relationship with the land and sea waters that continue to this day. I personally feel very grateful to be a guest here on these lands. So I'm going to go into a presentation that will give you some context on the CRD, the planning process, and the Regional Parks Strategic Plan components. That should take about 15 minutes, and then we'll have the remainder of the session available for Q&A and any other comments that may come up. So I'll just take a moment to switch over to sharing my screen. Sometimes it takes a minute to pop up. So welcome again. I'll just be giving a introduction to the current context in the region for regional parks. I'll discuss some of the planning related context. I'll outline the opportunities for engagement on the strategic plan, and then we'll get into some of the direction that the CRD board has provided to inform the strategic plan input. And then we'll go into the Q&A afterwards. So CRD Regional Parks protects and manages more than 13,000 hectares of natural areas in 32 regional parks and 3 regional trails on southern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. The Regional Parks Strategic Plan from 2012 to 2021 has set the overall vision, goals, and objectives for regional park service delivery. The CRD board initiated an update of the plan in December 2021 and extended the current plan until July of this year. The Park Strategic Plan from 2012 to 2021 set forth a number of strategic priority areas that have guided our service delivery over the past 10 years. And I'll just highlight some of these for you tonight. So the strategic priority area of strengthen the management of existing parks and trails. An example of work accomplished on this is the development of sustainable service delivery report cards. And this is the first set of steps towards an asset management program, looking at our infrastructure renewal cycles in regional parks and trails. Plan for an open land banked parks and trails. Most recently, CRD has opened phase 3 of the ENN Regional Trail and the Souk Hills Wilderness. Strengthen community involvement, education, and partnerships. This is achieved in part through agreements that CRD enters with different societies, and most recently CRD has entered into an agreement with the Souk Bike Club for maintaining mountain biking trails in the C2C area. Promote the health benefits of regional parks and trails. We primarily do this through our interpretive program delivery and various outreach. Engage in planning for regional sustainability. This was largely accomplished through the adoption of the CRD Regional Growth Strategy in 2018. The final strategic priority area is prepare for future land acquisitions. And the CRD most recently extended the land acquisition fund to 2029. And this is a reserve fund specifically for purchasing land for regional parks. So the current strategic plan establishes a park classification system. This is classifying parks by their management focus. It distinguishes the different roles that parks play in achieving the overall purpose of regional parks, which is to provide a range of protected natural environments and opportunities for outdoor experiences and activities. The strategic plan also establishes a regional trails classification system. So the screen before you shows the 4 different parks classifications. We have 1 recreation area park at Elk Beaver Lake, several conservation area parks, natural areas that have a more blended mix of protected areas and recreational opportunities, and our wilderness area, which essentially acts as a green belt. This slide provides us an overview of the evolution of the Regional Park Service, and I'll just draw attention to some of the key milestones that have defined our service in the last few years since 2012. And these are the Climate Action Strategy, the Regional Growth Strategy, and the extension of our Land Acquisition Fund. So the current strategic plan identified key challenges facing the regional parks and trails system a decade ago. And while many of those challenges remain similar today, it's important for us to anticipate what emerging opportunities and issues might face regional parks going forward, so that we can set a course for the organization's future actions and responses over the next decade. So the screen before you is probably not exhaustive, but certainly some of the trends and issues that we anticipate grappling with and addressing over the next years. So an updated strategic plan will help the CRD set priorities and manage and respond to these complex challenges that impact our parks and trails system. A strategic plan guides the organization in consistently making decisions that move us towards a desired future state. The key components of the updated strategic plan will include a renewed vision statement that identifies our desired future state of regional parks and trails, mission statements that define what is the core function of the Regional Parks and Trails Service, values and principles that define the core beliefs for regional parks. And I mentioned the current context, which outlines the emerging trends and issues. And then a set of priorities and initiatives will define what are the goals and desired outcomes for regional parks, and how are we going to achieve those results? And setting targets will help us measure success and ensure we are moving towards our goals. So an updated strategic plan will not only benefit staff at the CRD, the Regional Parks Committee and Board in consistently making decisions to advance the vision, but it will also benefit First Nations in the region, partner organizations, stakeholders, and the public in understanding what are CRD's priorities and commitments moving forward. So So as I mentioned, since the adoption of the strategic plan in 2012, the planning context in the CRD has changed. And so this slide seeks to demonstrate some of the key strategic documents in the CRD that relate to the Regional Park Service and will inform some of the priorities that are identified. So we'll be taking concepts from certainly the Statement of Reconciliation, which is CRD's commitment to First Nations reconciliation, climate action, regional transportation through active transportation and mobility options, and the regional growth strategy. So this slide just seeks to situate the strategic plan at a high level, higher in the hierarchy of other planning documents. So we don't need to get into the details here, but just keeping in mind that the strategic plan has an overarching reach and will inform all of the individual components of regional park service delivery through our park management planning, for example, our land acquisition, our park regulations, operational guidelines, and our interpretive programs, research and monitoring, etc. So in January of this year, the Regional Parks Committee met and held a workshop to set the preliminary direction for the strategic plan update. They also approved a framework for seeking engagement from different groups. So we will be reaching out to all First Nations with traditional territory in the region through direct invitations to engage with us on the material. We'll be setting up meetings and working with the individual nations throughout the update process, and that is underway already. In February, we held a series of intense focus groups. There were 2-hour sessions with stakeholders representing broad conservation, recreation, and community or social interests in the region. And this informed some of the changes or kind of seeked validation of some of the material from those broad groups. And now we've developed a public survey that's live. It went live last week, I believe, and it's open until April 4th. And that's on our Get Involved webpage. We're hosting a series of information sessions like the one tonight, and we do have more information on our website and in the media as well. So the input we received through engagement will be compiled during April and May, and it will directly inform the development of an updated strategic plan. That plan will be brought back to the Regional Parks Committee, and the regional board is the decision maker who will ultimately accept the final document. Okay, moving into kind of the key components here. So at the February 9th CRD board meeting, the board accepted the vision that's before you. They also moved that a lens of conservation and protection of biodiversity be applied to these priorities and processes. So please keep that in mind that although it may not be overt as a dominant priority, that conservation and protection of biodiversity is the lens in which we review all of this material. So in the survey, you're asked to provide your input on the proposed vision. There's opportunity to enter some information if you do not oppose in terms of why. What we heard through stakeholder feedback were that the CRD could consider new concepts to add to the vision, including connectivity, active transportation, and inspiring stewardship and education. So move on to the mission statements. These mission statements have been prepared based on what's in the current strategic plan. They're summarized and condensed, but the ultimate essence hopefully has not been lost. So again, they're presented here for you tonight to review, and they're also included in the survey to gather your level of support. Stakeholder feedback about the mission also highlighted the function of regional trails for active transportation as needing to be highlighted, as well as the key function that regional parks plays in providing environmental education and leadership. So this set of values and accompanying principles has been prepared from the current strategic plan, as well as from results of what we've heard through other public engagement efforts and other CRD board initiatives. So again, the values and principles form the core beliefs and perspectives for future actions and decision making. And in the survey, we asked for your input on whether these values and principles should be reflected in the updated strategic plan. And based on stakeholder feedback, we've added additional values that were proposed to be included, and we seek your feedback on those, which are leadership, partnership, stewardship, connectivity, education, and accountability. So a set of key priority statements have been prepared for guiding the strategic plan update. They're developed in 4 theme areas, the 4 themes being the relationship between conservation and recreation, access and equity, climate action and resiliency, and reconciliation. And these are not in any priority order, they're just 4 separate theme areas that have emerged based on our review of the last strategic plan, as well as a review of other CRD strategies and initiatives that relate to regional parks and trails. So under conservation and recreation, these are summarized on the screen for you, but I'll read them out in full. The first one is take action to conserve biodiversity through acquiring land, restoration and monitoring of ecosystems. The second is enable users to recreate and have outdoor recreation experiences that are enjoyable, safe, and compatible. Work with partners in taking care of the land and water and providing sustainable outdoor recreation. And finally, foster stewardship through program delivery, knowledge sharing, and leading by example. So when you enter the survey, the priority statements are divided up into smaller components than what I've just provided you for ease of honing in on the specific actions that CRD should be taking to achieve to work towards these priorities. Under access and equity, we have enhanced health and well-being by providing nature and outdoor recreation experiences for all ages and abilities. Promote complete and connected communities by ensuring recreation, parks, and green space can easily be accessed by transit, walking, recycling. And this draws from a key concept in the regional growth strategy in terms of developing complete communities where you can walk and cycle and access nature readily. The third is ensure economic fairness by managing regional parks and trails as a common good. So this speaks to free access to parks, whereas there may be other opportunities for non-tax-based revenue generation that don't necessarily impact people in the region who may have income, low income, or other access issues. That's right. The final is in this section, strengthen an accessibility and equity lens in service delivery. I'll just move through the final two theme areas, and then we can open to the Q&A. So under climate action and resiliency, we're looking to align our sustainable service delivery and infrastructure improvements with climate action. So really applying a climate lens on our asset renewal. Advance regional active transportation opportunities that contribute to greenhouse gas reduction. So this is looking at our regional trail system primarily, as well as the ways that people access parks, transit, etc. Develop partnerships for the long-term, consistent and connected management of green space and ecosystem services. So working with our partners to identify those connections between parks and ecosystems. Strategically acquire and manage natural areas to address climate mitigation, urban containment, and access to green space for a growing population. So looking at our land acquisition through that lens of climate mitigation, urban containment, and our future population pressures. The priorities under reconciliation are were seen by the stakeholder focus groups to be aspects that are best suited to hear directly from First Nations on, and we are certainly pursuing that direct engagement with the nations to determine their interests. The survey is also seeking input from the public on what you see as opportunities for how CRD regional parks can support reconciliation with First Nations. So what is proposed as priorities, and again, this is based on other board initiatives currently that relate to regional parks. We have incorporate First Nations worldviews, knowledge, and reconciliation objectives in the management of natural assets and cultural heritage. Provide space for cultural and ceremonial use, food and medicine harvesting, traditional management practices, and reclaiming Indigenous names. Strengthen engagement with First Nations in service delivery initiatives, and seek partnerships, share information, and deliver fair and equitable services in working with First Nations on achieving their economic goals. So I'll just mention that finally the survey asks some basic demographic information about you, and also provides an opportunity to provide any other comments about the material. So that's that's the scope of the survey. And I'm going to stop sharing the presentation at this time. And we'll turn it over to Christiana.
Yes,
thank you.
we already have one question, which is nice. Last time we had to bait everyone to ask questions a little bit. So Kathy has asked, all sounds like a noble endeavor. How have the vision and priorities changed?
How have they changed since this material was presented to the board? All we have done so far is compile a summary of the stakeholder input, and that is available on Get Involved on our webpage as a summary document of what we have heard so far. We've also had similar engagement with other park agencies and with staff. Oh, but whenever the plan existed before, excuse me. So some of the vision is lengthy in the current.
Oh, sorry, Emma, I just want to quickly update. So Kathy was asking not how it's changed since it was presented to the board, but how it's changed since the previous plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the vision in the last strategic plan is super lengthy. The essence is captured in the current vision. There's some key concepts that, such as nature needs half, that was not incorporated in the current vision, and it also was debated and not included in the regional growth strategy as being too lofty. The strategic priorities, what went to the Regional Parks Committee in January was a more fulsome summary of what's been accomplished from the strategic plan so far. And much of the work that has been fully developed from the last strategic plan will not carry over into the new plan because it's operationalized into our regular practice here. There are a few items that will carry over into the new strategic plan that have maybe been initiated but not fully complete, such as the expansion of the ENN rail regional trail, for example. So that review is underway, and it may be determined that some of the work that was not fully developed from the last plan either doesn't become a priority today, or it has a different context.
Did that answer your question, Kathy?
If I remember correctly, I think the previous plan is also available on the Get Involved page under key documents, which is on like the right-hand side of the page. So if you really wanted to go in and like compare, that is also an option.
So Kathy says not really looking for more specific info. And as well, I do see Alan's question in the chat as well. So I think Kathy is looking for more specific info on like how has the vision and the priorities like tangibly changed. And she added, what recreation is being considered as worthy of park use?
Okay, so I would direct Kathy to the current strategic plan that's on the Get Involved page to read through the vision and the January 26th Regional Parks Committee staff report has that fulsome review that I mentioned that reviews what are the strategic priorities from the last plan that have been accomplished and what remains outstanding.
Okay, we're going to jump to Alan's question. Sorry, I see some people putting questions in the chat. If you're able to put it in the Q&A, that would be great, because that way it's in order and I can make sure that I see it and then I don't miss it. But I see the ones in the chat. So first we have Alan asking, what priority does CRD place on the removal of invasive plant species from parks? Example, making them more natural.
Great question. So CRD Regional Parks works with the program CRISP, that is an invasive plant. They've developed a priority list of invasive species. So CRD Regional Parks adopts that kind of priority ranking for which invasives should be targeted first. The removal of invasives, I believe, is included in the survey as something that we're asking for feedback on, in terms of where should CRD be putting their efforts in terms of ecosystem monitoring or restoration or enhancement.
I also just want to quickly throw in a side note for you, Alan. So the CRD now has a podcast. It's called Chamber Chat. And don't tell anyone, it's a secret. But a little birdie told me that the next episode is going to be about invasive species in the CRD. So you might find that interesting. Just a little bonus point there. A question from Chris Moss. So what are the plans for out past Souk? What weight is being put on watershed protection?
Good question. Again, Chris. So this strategic plan doesn't have a specific land acquisition component to it. We'll use kind of the broad vision and values and priority sets to inform what will fall out of the strategic plan. Will be a land acquisition plan, and that is also up for renewal in the next year. And that will target specific lands that CRD Regional Parks is interested in acquiring. But the strategic plan could indicate that underrepresented communities, for example, should be given priority for protection. Like, again, that concept of all communities having access within proximity to their community for accessing parks by walking and biking or transit. And watershed protection would fall under the climate action sort of lens of ensuring our park boundaries align with natural boundaries such as watersheds.
Okay, I'm going to mark that one as done if that's okay with you, Chris. Yeah, okay. Another question from Kathy. So Kathy wants clarification. She asked, so the survey is not about specifics.
So the survey does go through these high level, almost philosophical concepts or values and reiterating the mission and gauging input on the new vision. The priority statements are broken down into kind of more specific actions that we're asking input on. And there may be others that do not appear in the survey that you may want to add in the open-ended question in the survey. So this is really a plan in development. Given the timing, we won't be able to bring a fulsome draft forward for specific feedback on. This is really just a process of idea generating and validation and drawing on what we know are CRD priorities from other departments that relate to regional parks and trails.
A question from Kara is, have you considered more community-based volunteer organization? The current system is very centralized.
So this is something that we definitely heard loud and clear through our stakeholder focus groups, and we are aware that there's interest in developing more partnership opportunities, as well as kind of expanding that scope of what volunteer opportunities there might be. So there are some questions in the survey, certainly about developing partnerships with different types of user groups, as well as collaboration, knowledge sharing, and getting into the stewardship aspect as well.
I'll also quickly add on to that. So we recently came to a license agreement with 2 recreation groups, with the South Island Mountain Bike Society and the Souk Bike Club, and that is having them volunteer to maintain authorized mountain biking trails. So there's like a little bit of not just CRD volunteering happening, if that's the kind of thing you were looking for. Okay, we have another question from Kathy that I'm not sure if we already answered.
I don't think so.
So what recreation is being considered for park use?
What recreation is considered worthy of park use? Is that the one?
Yeah.
So I think this is getting at this idea of what is compatible outdoor recreation in parks, keeping in mind that lens of conservation and protection of biodiversity as being primary. So the current plan does include somewhat of a definition about what is deemed as compatible outdoor recreation. And I will just read it out. So it's an activity that depends on a natural environment, has a minimal impact on the natural environment, encourages an appreciation for and understanding of the natural environment, and is compatible with other park or trail users. And it goes on to define what is a non-compatible activity, and that's where it gets into the motorized vehicle use, causing excessive noise and interfering with others. So we'll draw from that set of definitions in defining what is compatible outdoor recreation, and it may have a different application based on what park classification it's in.
We have another question from Chris. So Chris is asking, is this too high level planning to ask if there will be electric vehicle charging stations in parks with parking lots? Anything past Kemp Lake has no public transportation and no bike lanes on the road.
Not too high level, actually. So this is more a direction from our CRD's climate action strategy, is looking at a regional approach to EV charging stations. But certainly this is something that regional parks as a service area has to determine how are we implementing that policy, that direction for EV charging. So it may be something that you want to input in the survey in terms of whether you think that's a priority and where we should start that work first, whether it be the outlying areas where you essentially have to take a vehicle to.
Okay, we have 2 other questions from Kathy that I think we can kind of combine into one because they're very related. So I think in reference to me mentioning the mountain biking license agreement, Kathy asked, will that include policing mountain biking? And followed up, I know there's a difficulty ensuring cliff jumping doesn't happen at Thetis Lake. So I'm wondering what will manage appropriate use of mountain bike trails.
Yeah, so this is where if at the strategic plan level, we see a need to really define what this compatible outdoor recreation means and kind of what are the measures that we can implement to ensure that we can offer safe and enjoyable outdoor recreation and at the same time achieve our conservation goals. This may drive development of things like our mountain biking guidelines, which kind of links into some trail standards, links into our etiquette messaging, and ultimately our regulation and enforcement. So the strategic plan will kind of have that ripple effect down in terms of doing a review of all of our guidelines and regulations to make sure they align.
And I'll just quickly add for context, currently that stuff is managed under bylaws. So with our park rangers, we do also have mountain bike stewards who are volunteers who help teach people about trail etiquette, but that's, as Emma mentioned, kind of the direct direction is like a little bit of a step below the strategic plan, but there is something there. So. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have right now. Oh, another one just popped up. Thank you, Kara, for saving us an awkward silence. In terms of accessibility, how can CRD parks partner more with transit?
It's a really great question. We actually had a few representatives in our stakeholder focus groups that were encouraging this type of partnership with transit, also highlighting some potential constraints, but fortunately, CRD Regional Parks works very closely with our regional planning team. And now CRD has a transportation committee and a transportation working group. So there's a real synergy happening right now in the region to look at multimodal transportation. So municipalities are involved, transit agencies are involved, provincial governments involved in this conversation. So there's momentum there. I don't know how to directly answer your question just yet, but I think we need to determine ways that we can partner with transit and allow people to access parks without relying on vehicles. And that speaks to that accessibility and equity priority.
Okay, any other questions? And even though this is for the strategic plan, which is a fairly high level document, you can ask us any question about parks. Please feel free.
There's a lot of material presented and it may be that it's not achievable for CRD to necessarily tackle all of these things. So it's really important to hear through the survey responses what the public does want CRD to focus on and what you see as a priority moving forward.
Oh, another question. Kara asked, cultural interpretation, example, a major inland midden at Mill Hill.
So CRD has recently increased the staff resources at CRD Parks, and we do have a cultural interpreter now. So that is a staff position here, and there's a lot of cultural programming being developed. So we're very excited about that because it's a whole learning opportunity for all of us, certainly.
This is my opportunity to plug an upcoming Indigenous Perspectives walk that's being hosted by said cultural interpreter. It's very interesting. Okay, oh, we have a few questions coming in. Lorraine asks, will the public have input into the land acquisition plan that is due to be reviewed in the next year?
Yes, There was actually a series of open houses a couple of winters ago, right before COVID, I believe, that was looking at a land evaluation analysis that was done, and we hope that that work will inform part of the land acquisition plan, but that won't be brought forward until after the strategic plan is developed. But typically for any planning process, the CRD includes a public engagement opportunity. And if you do subscribe on the Get Involved page, you can get updates about all public engagement opportunities that CRD offers. So that's a way to just not have to keep checking back. You can get the updates, or certainly please contact us directly and we can make sure that you get put on an interest list.
Okay, we have 2 questions and 9 minutes left. So if anyone has any last minute questions, try and get them in. So next question is from Chris. How much weight is on public input? I'm guessing that's in reference to how much weight is for how it will change the plan. Chris, if that's not the case, let me know.
Yeah, so certainly the committee and the board will be receiving a full engagement report that documents all of our engagement efforts. So the detail on the stakeholder engagement and the focus groups, the First Nations engagement, and the public survey responses. So if there's anything alarming or maybe things that we've missed, it'll be staff reviewing and finding ways to address those anomalies or different interests and bringing it to the committee and board for consideration. So we foresee the engagement report accompanying the updated strategic plan document.
Okay, I'm going to try and get through these next 2. Alan asks, are there any plans to construct new trails in existing parks, possibly improving unofficial trails?
So typically it's a park management plan that identifies where new facilities are going to be developed and the types of new facilities that are appropriate for that park. So for example, right now the Mount Work Park Management Plan is being developed, and it's actually going to our Regional Parks Committee in the following months, and will be another public engagement opportunity on that. So you could see kind of more directly how trail plans are incorporated into park management plans, and CRD does work on certainly closing unofficial trails that are developed that are not authorized, but also working with these stakeholder groups like the South Island Mountain Bike Society, for example, to find ways to improve or formally designate certain unofficial trails. That's happening in Theodis Lake right now. There's a review of some of the unofficial trails there. Okay,
the next question, I think, if you'd like me to answer, Emma, I can do this
please.
one. So I found out about the CRD survey by accident via an email about another subject. What media is being used for the public to respond to your survey? So I'm the person who's been doing all the media. So we had a media release upon launch. It's featured at the head of our website. It's on the Get Involved page. So an email was sent out to all people who subscribe to updates from the CRD. There's been an ad in the Times Colonist. There's been an ad in the Oak Bay Gazette, the Goldstream, or the Goldstream Gazette, Oak Bay News, all of the Black press papers. So I think about 8 of them. It's also been posted on our social media channels, and we currently have online advertising running. So we do try and reach as many people as we possibly can.
I'll add to that, we have a stakeholder list of about 250 stakeholder groups. So an email was sent to all of those groups to distribute to their members as well.
Yeah, but if you have any suggestions, I always love to hear them because we're always trying to reach more people. So please feel free to drop those in the chat.
Thank you, Kara.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will just take the last couple minutes to say that this is a very condensed timeline for this update. So it is somewhat challenging to put meaningful material forward and meaningful opportunities for input. So we're asked to bring back a new plan in June to the committee and the July board. That's partly due to the fall election cycle and there not being active local government decision making happening this fall. So that's largely why we have this condensed timeline. But the next steps are, like, the survey is open until April 4th. So please spread the word or let us know how we can do better to spread the word. If you have follow-up questions or thoughts afterwards, there's our contact information is on the Get Involved site, where I'm sure you can track us down here at Mill Hill or by email. Happy to hear from you. Happy to have a conversation, or if you have other resources or examples of more tangible targets CRD should be pursuing. That's all certainly relevant and helpful for this update.
So there's 3 minutes left, and I want to officially give you all permission that if you'd like to leave, you're very welcome to leave. You don't have to stay right until 6 p.m., but we'll stay right here until 6 p.m. So if you'd like to leave, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to stay and ask another question, let us know.
Yeah, related or not to the strategic plan. I know the CRD is often difficult organization to navigate, so we'll do our best to respond. You know, that owl flew by my window a while ago.
Full circle moment.
Wow. That's funny. When I was off camera, I had to close my window because I was hearing it outside again. It was hooting. So pretty.
I just had someone vacuuming right outside my door.
Oh, it's not as pretty.
So Kara's mentioned being concerned about wildlife corridors. So this is something that through the concept of connectivity, connecting our green spaces, and also research and having a more evidence-based understanding of wildlife movement in the area. We do have kind of informal relationships with different researchers looking at carnivore activity and different wildlife. And CRD has been able to hire some new conservation specialist positions recently. So we hope that there's more capacity here to understand wildlife movement. More land acquisition from the rain. Thank you everyone for spending the early part of your evening with us. We are having one more info session on April 1st. It's a lunchtime event from 12 to 1. People do need to register again through Zoom. So if you know anyone interested, please pass that on. We hope you take the survey and stay involved.
I'm going to stop recording now.